This video touches on what I love about generations X, Y, and Z. As people age, it's natural for them to tend to become insular and limit their interactions with younger generations. And this is a big mistake. After watching this, I hope baby boomers will reconsider their feelings and their comfort level about socializing with other generations. I've worked with younger people for the past 35 years in computer hardware and software engineering, and I've always been keen to be friends with them. Why not? Besides each individual's inherent goodness, as a class of people, being around them can be invigorating. I don't mean invigorating in a York peppermint patty ski jump commercial kind of way. Don't worry if you don't know what that means. It's a boomer thing. It's normal to be more cautious as we age. We experience and hopefully fully recover from downturns in life. We know how easily a good thing can go sideways, or at least we know it more or better than we did when we were younger. We know how ephemeral employment can be. You're a member of the team one day and you're laid off the next. We grow established habits that we don't see any reason to change, and we start to collect real physical limits maybe on what we can do. Now, I'm not saying that we older folks walk around being comatose, but in comparison, no matter what generations you're talking about, later generations act more impulsively and are openly more energetic than earlier generations. And that's a great thing to pick up on. It can prod me out of my comfort zone, and in fact it has, which is a wonderful feeling. When I'm making a familiar and easy choice, listening to a younger individual may make me consider something new and different and take a chance on what I normally wouldn't consider. You'll also learn about all sorts of stuff that you normally would not. Now, the previous point was about how generations X, Y, and Z behave and how they can invigorate my own behavior. This point is about what they know. Because their media sources, cultural touch points, and values differ from baby boomers, you'll learn about stuff sooner than you would from your regular information sources. And I'm talking about music, art, books, games, activities, events. There's stuff out there that I normally wouldn't learn about, or I eventually would, but I would learn about later. And this can be especially noticeable in the workplace. It's human nature to be more interested in learning a new thing than to learn a thing that replaces what you already know how to do. For example, if you know how to wire a light switch, you're less inclined to learn a new way of doing it. You're fine with what you already know. Your technique works. If you work in software engineering and you work with software frameworks and you've organized your project's files in a certain way for years, it's familiar and there's no obvious reason to be interested or inquisitive about changing it. A younger generation brings their knowledge about new techniques and tools they learned in their education or in a previous job, which can be a job that a baby boomer might not normally have. For example, hey, I know a better tool for code linting. Check this out. Or, hey, I know an easier way to flush that hot water tank. Now, of course, you could certainly learn new techniques from other sources, but there are only so many hours in the day, and having someone introduce them to your team is a real time saver. In essence, the younger generations, the later generations, are new and effective sources for learning things. And of course, by the way, everything that I'm talking about here isn't just about baby boomers. 20 years from now, a Gen Y or a Gen Z person can be saying the same thing, right? This is true for any age cohort relative to any other age cohort in time. It's very satisfying to see a Gen X, Y, or Z person advance in work and life, even though you're not responsible for their success in any way. I worked with someone who went from a very nervous job interview to carving her own career path and now being recognized as a database luminary. I worked with another person who bought his first condo and went down that wonderful first-time home buyer's learning curve. And for both of them, I wasn't responsible for their successes in even the tiniest degree. I mean, I maybe chimed in with real estate advice on one or two occasions, and that was really it. It was super satisfying to watch them succeed because I knew what they were experiencing and what they were going through, since I had trod those very same paths on my own once upon a time. When you embrace differences, you can be tickled pink as you watch others forge their path in life. It's a life is a circle kind of wonderful feeling. Well, here's the biggest reason why I love generations X, Y, and Z. Differences are inherently good. I'll start my argument by talking about so-called over 55 communities. Sometimes they're called retirement communities. These can be formal communities, corporations, whatever, with gates and a check-in desk and even a guardhouse. Or they can be just informal developments, just certain neighborhoods that over time, for whatever reason, have a preponderance of older inhabitants. I think that moving into one of these is a mistake more often than not. Now, I understand the attraction. You're surrounded by others who are just like you, give or take a few years. You'll tend to have the same concerns, behaviors, and cultural preferences, and maybe even political preferences, and this can be comforting. Now, some people need a retirement community because they need assisted living. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about people who are fully ambulatory, okay? They drive cars, they do stuff, but they want to move into a community, into a housing development of some sort where the HOA, one of the requirements is, you have to be at least of a certain age. So I think the comfort here is exactly what's wrong with them. When you're surrounded by people who are just like yourself, you're in great danger of becoming set in your ways. And here's how it works. It's a short step from being super comfortable because you're with other people that are just like you to becoming intolerant or fearful of anyone different from you. And then it's a short step to go from that to out and out losing empathy for others. And then your cultural connections start to contract. You'll go to only certain events, mix it up with only certain kinds of people because you're comfortable with them. And so your universe, your mental universe anyway, your emotional, social universe contracts over time. Now, you can counteract these tendencies. They're not inevitable, but that takes energy. You'll have to always be on guard for your mind becoming less flexible. And you can do that, but I think that's a challenge for anyone to do over a number of years. And this is why differences are inherently good. Mixing it up with other generations exposes you to different realities. And incidentally, that's also true when you interact with people of other races, gender preferences, and religions. Tolerating our differences, then appreciating our differences, and then finally loving our differences keeps your mind flexible and your soul young at heart. So here's a true story. In the spring, summer, and fall in my neighborhood, there are some local kids, I say kids, they're teenagers, middle school, high school students who play basketball in nearby basketball courts. And when the sun sets and it's time for them to go home, they walk home and they're all talking about normal school stuff and sports and the basketball game that they just had. And one of them is inevitably bouncing the basketball on the sidewalk as they walk home. And they walk home, at least some of them, right in front of my house. Now, it would be easy to say, geez, what's going on out there? Why is that kid bouncing the basketball? I'm trying to read, or I'm trying to maybe go to sleep early. But in fact, I look at it completely differently. That bouncing basketball, that's the stuff of life. First of all, it's almost the ultimate in Americana that you can possibly get. And secondly, it's the stuff of neighborliness, of community, of life. I mean, it's, what's more wholesome than a couple of kids talking about school, yakking it up, and, bouncing a basketball as they walk home. And every time I hear that, I get a smile on my face. Every time I hear that sound, because I think that's life. There's youth, there's middle age, there's senior citizens. This is a phase of life, and it reminds me about what my neighborhood is. And actually, I love it. Appreciating and then enjoying younger generations will improve your engagement and satisfaction with life. And that's what I love about mixing it up with generations X, Y, and Z. Till next time, take care.